Welcome back to Cheating Tales Lab. Thank you for tuning in. We've got another gripping story for you today, and we hope it keeps you entertained. Let's not wait any longer. Let's dive into the story. Franklin Browning's flight touched down at 2:17 p.m., a full 3 hours earlier than expected. As he strode through the airport, his mind raced with possibilities. The breakthrough he'd made on his sustainable water filtration project could change everything, not just for his career, but for millions without access to clean water. He hailed a cab, barely noticing the driver's attempt at small talk. Franklin's fingers tapped restlessly on his briefcase. Inside were the notes that could revolutionize his field. He couldn't wait to share the news with Stella. She'd been supportive through all the late nights and missed dinners. Now he could finally show her it was worth it. The cab pulled up to their modest apartment building. Franklin paid quickly, grabbed his luggage, and bounded up the stairs 2 at a time. He fished for his keys, then paused. Stella's voice drifted through the door, low and intense. "I can't take it anymore, Anthony," she was saying. "Franklin's always working, and when he's home, he's obsessing over his world-changing ideas. What about my dreams? My need for adventure?" Franklin's hand froze on the doorknob. His mind reeled, trying to process what he was hearing. Stella continued, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're right, Anthony. I deserve better. Someone who can give me the life I want." The world tilted sideways. Franklin steadied himself against the wall, his breath coming in short gasps. This couldn't be happening. Not after everything they'd been through together. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. Then he turned the key and stepped inside. Stella whirled around, her face draining of color. "Franklin, I didn't know you were home," she stammered, fumbling to end the call. "Clearly," Franklin replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He set down his briefcase with deliberate care. "I think we need to talk." Stella's eyes darted around the room, looking everywhere but at her husband. "Talk? About what?" "I was just on the phone with a friend." "A friend?" Franklin's tone was flat. "And does this friend have a name? Anthony, perhaps?" Stella's posture stiffened. "You were eavesdropping?" "I came home early to surprise you," Franklin said. "Seems I'm the one who got the surprise." The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Then something in Stella's expression shifted. The fear vanished, replaced by a cold anger. "Fine," she spat. "Yes, I was talking to Anthony. And you know what? I'm glad you heard. I'm sick of pretending everything's okay when it's not." Franklin fought to keep his voice level. "And what exactly isn't okay, Stella? I thought we were building a life together, working towards our goals." Stella laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Our goals? You mean your goals? Your precious work that always comes first. When's the last time you asked about my dreams?" "I've always supported your dreams," Franklin said, struggling to understand. "I thought we were in this together." "Together?" Stella's voice dripped with scorn. "You're so naive, Franklin. While you've been chasing your fantasy of saving the world, I've been suffocating. Anthony sees me for who I really am. He wants to give me the life I deserve." Franklin's jaw clenched. "The life you deserve? And what life is that, exactly?" Stella's eyes glittered. "Adventure, excitement, passion, all the things you've forgotten about while you're buried in your work. Anthony's taking me to Bora Bora next month. When's the last time you even took me to dinner?" The words hit Franklin like a physical blow. He thought of all the nights he'd worked late, convinced he was doing it for their future. Had he really been so blind? "So that's it?" he asked, his voice tight with anger and hurt. "You're throwing away our marriage for a vacation?" Stella stalked towards him, her face flushed. "It's not about the vacation, Franklin. It's about the life I deserve. Anthony can give me that. You can't." She paused, then delivered the final blow. "I want a divorce." Franklin stood rooted to the spot, his mind reeling. The life he thought he knew was crumbling around him. But beneath the shock and pain, something else stirred. A cold, hard resolve. "A divorce," he repeated, his voice devoid of emotion. "Is that really what you want, Stella?" She nodded, chin lifted defiantly. Franklin's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll get one. But don't think for a second this ends here. He turned on his heel and strode to the bedroom, yanking open drawers and shoving clothes into a suitcase. Stella followed, her bravado faltering slightly. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Leaving," Franklin said shortly. "You made your choice. Now you can live with it." He zipped the suitcase closed with more force than necessary. As he brushed past Stella, she grabbed his arm. "Franklin, wait. We should talk about this. About arrangements." He shook off her hand. "We'll talk through our lawyers. You wanted a divorce, Stella. Congratulations. You've got one." With that, he walked out the door, not sparing a glance behind him. The cool evening air hit his face as he emerged from the building. He hailed a cab, giving the address of a nearby hotel. As the city lights blurred past the window, Franklin's mind raced. The excitement of his breakthrough seemed a lifetime ago. Now, all he could think about was how quickly everything had fallen apart. But beneath the turmoil, a steely determination took root. Stella thought she could discard him so easily? She had no idea what was coming. Franklin Browning was not a man to be trifled with, and he would make damn sure she remembered that. The weeks that followed were a blur of work and legal meetings. Franklin threw himself into his project with renewed vigor, channeling his pain into determination. The water filtration system became his obsession, his reason for getting up each morning. Stella, for her part, seemed intent on making the divorce as painful as possible. Her demands were outrageous, her attitude spiteful. Franklin weathered it all with a cold detachment that unnerved even his own lawyer. At the office, Franklin's colleagues noticed the change in him. Gone was the easygoing researcher, replaced by a man of singular focus and drive. No one dared to slack off or question his methods. All except Susan Chun. Susan had been Franklin's friend and fellow environmental engineer for years. She watched his transformation with growing concern. One night, as the office emptied and Franklin remained hunched over his computer, she decided to intervene. "Franklin," she said softly, approaching his desk, "are you okay? You've been here day and night." He looked up, his eyes bloodshot but focused. "I'm fine, Susan. Just focused on making this project work. It's all I have left." Susan hesitated, then pulled up a chair. "You know that's not true. You have friends here. People who care about you." Franklin's expression softened slightly. "I appreciate that, Susan. I do. But right now, I need to concentrate on this. It's the only thing keeping me sane." Susan nodded, understanding in her eyes. Then she straightened, her tone becoming more businesslike. "Well, in that case, I have some news that might interest you. There's a major corporation interested in our filtration system. They want to meet next week." For the first time in weeks, a spark of genuine excitement lit Franklin's eyes. "Really? Who?" "Global Hospitality Group," Susan said. "They're looking to implement eco-friendly systems in their resorts worldwide. If we can impress them, it could be huge for us." Franklin nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Then we'd better be ready to blow them away." As Susan left, Franklin reflected on their friendship. She'd been his rock through this ordeal, always there with a word of encouragement or a fresh perspective on their work. For the first time since that fateful night, he felt a glimmer of hope. He turned back to his computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. Stella thought she'd broken him. Anthony thought he could steal Franklin's life. But they had no idea what he was capable of. This project wasn't just about clean water anymore. It was about proving to the world, and to himself, that Franklin Browning was a force to be reckoned with. As the night deepened, Franklin worked on, fueled by determination and the promise of redemption. The city slept, unaware that within its midst, a man was forging a plan that would change not just his life, but countless others. And when the dust settled, those who had underestimated him would learn the true cost of their mistake. 2 years had passed since that fateful night when Franklin Browning's world shattered. The pain of betrayal had long since hardened into cold determination. Now, he stood in a sleek boardroom, facing a panel of executives from Global Hospitality Group. His patented water filtration system, once just a dream, was about to become a reality. Franklin's eyes swept the room, taking in the expectant faces. He'd rehearsed this presentation countless times with Susan. Every word, every slide, was perfectly calibrated for maximum impact. He wouldn't let this opportunity slip away. "Gentlemen," Franklin began, his voice steady and confident. "What you're about to see will revolutionize water usage in the hospitality industry." For the next hour, Franklin laid out his vision. He spoke of sustainability, of drastic reductions in water waste, of the potential to bring clean water to drought-stricken regions. The executives leaned forward, their eyes gleaming with interest. As Franklin concluded, a heavy silence fell over the room. Then, slowly, Gilbert Guerrero, the CEO of Global Hospitality Group, began to applaud. The other executives followed suit. "Mr. Browning," Gilbert said, standing to shake Franklin's hand. "That was truly impressive. Your system could indeed revolutionize water usage in our resorts worldwide." Franklin allowed himself a small smile. "Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. I'm glad you see the potential." Gilbert nodded, then paused, his expression turning serious. "We're not just interested in licensing, Mr. Browning. We want to acquire your company outright." Franklin's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment he'd been working towards for years. But he couldn't show his excitement. "Not yet. I'm open to discussing terms, Mr. Guerrero," Franklin said carefully. "But I have one condition." Gilbert raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Franklin met his gaze steadily. "I want a controlling stake in your Bora Bora resort." The room fell silent. Gilbert's eyes narrowed slightly, a mix of confusion and intrigue on his face. "That's an unusual request, Mr. Browning. May I ask why?" Franklin maintained his composure, his voice cool and professional. "Let's just say I have a personal interest in seeing this particular property succeed with our new technology." Gilbert studied Franklin for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "I see. Well, Mr. Browning, you've certainly piqued my curiosity. Why don't we discuss this further over dinner? I have a feeling there's an interesting story behind this request." As the meeting adjourned, Franklin felt a surge of triumph. He was one step closer to his goal. Stella and Anthony thought they'd left him behind, broken and defeated. They had no idea what was coming. Later that evening, over a lavish dinner, Franklin laid out his vision for the Bora Bora resort. He spoke of making it a showcase for sustainable luxury, a model for the entire industry. Gilbert listened intently, clearly impressed by Franklin's passion and knowledge. "You drive a hard bargain, Mr. Browning," Gilbert said as they shook hands at the end of the night. "But I think we can make this work. Our legal team will draw up the paperwork." "Welcome to Global Hospitality Group." Franklin allowed himself a genuine smile. "Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. I look forward to our partnership." As he left the restaurant, Franklin pulled out his phone and dialed Susan's number. "Well?" Susan's voice was tense with anticipation. "We did it," Franklin said simply. "They're buying the company, and I'm getting Bora Bora." Susan's whoop of joy echoed through the phone. "Franklin, that's amazing. I knew you could do it." "We did it, Susan," Franklin corrected her. "I couldn't have done this without you." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "So, what happens now?" Franklin's voice hardened slightly. "Now? Now we prepare for Phase 2. Weeks of intense negotiations and paperwork followed. Franklin threw himself into the work, fine-tuning every detail of the agreement. Finally, the day arrived. Franklin stood in Gilbert's office, pen in hand, ready to sign the final documents. "Mr. Browning," Gilbert said, a note of admiration in his voice. "I must say, you've impressed me at every turn. Are you sure you won't reconsider my offer to join our board of directors?" Franklin shook his head, smiling slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Guerrero, but I prefer a more hands-on approach. I'll be heading to Bora Bora next week to oversee the implementation personally." Gilbert nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course. Well, I look forward to seeing the results." "Good luck, Mr. Browning." As Franklin signed his name with a flourish, he felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The pieces were falling into place. Stella and Anthony had no idea what was coming. The flight to Bora Bora was long, but Franklin hardly noticed. His mind was consumed with plans and strategies. As the plane touched down, he took a deep breath. This was it, the moment he'd been working towards for 2 years. Franklin stepped off the plane, the warm tropical air enveloping him. A man in a crisp suit approached, hand extended. Mr. Browning? I'm Arthur McCarty, the resort manager. It's an honor to have you here. Franklin shook his hand firmly. Thank you, Mr. McCarty. I'm looking forward to seeing the property. As they walked towards the waiting car, Arthur launched into an enthusiastic description of the resort. Your filtration system is already making waves in the industry, Mr. Browning. We've had inquiries from other resorts asking about it. Franklin nodded, only half listening. His eyes scanned the surroundings, taking in every detail. Somewhere on this island, Stella and Anthony were living their dream life. He allowed himself a small, cold smile. Not for much longer. The resort was impressive, a sprawling complex of luxury bungalows and pristine beaches. As Arthur led him on a tour, Franklin made mental notes. He'd need to know every inch of this place for his plan to work. They were passing the main bar when Franklin froze. There, behind the counter, was a familiar face. Anthony Levine, looking considerably less polished than Franklin remembered, was mixing drinks for a group of tourists. Their eyes met. Anthony's face drained of color, his hand fumbling the bottle he was holding. Is something wrong, Mr. Browning? Arthur asked, noticing Franklin's sudden stillness. Franklin's voice was cool when he replied. No, nothing at all. But I think we need to review the staff roster. I have some concerns about quality control. Arthur looked confused but nodded. Of course, sir. We can do that right away if you'd like. Tomorrow will be fine, Franklin said smoothly. For now, I'd like to see my accommodations. It's been a long flight. As they walked away, Franklin could feel Anthony's eyes boring into his back. He allowed himself a small, satisfied smirk. Let him sweat. Later that evening, Franklin sat in his luxurious suite, poring over the staff files Arthur had provided. Anthony's was near the top, a flimsy cover story about his bartending experience. Franklin snorted. It was almost too easy. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Arthur, looking nervous. Mr. Browning, I hope I'm not disturbing you. But after our conversation earlier, I did some digging. It seems there are some irregularities with a few of our employees' backgrounds, particularly the bartender you noticed. Franklin leaned back in his chair, expression neutral. Is that so? Tell me more, Mr. McCarty. Arthur shifted uncomfortably. Well, sir, it appears Mr. Levine may have exaggerated his qualifications, and there are some gaps in his employment history that don't add up. I see, Franklin said slowly. And what do you recommend we do about this, Mr. McCarty? Arthur straightened, seeming relieved to be on familiar ground. Standard procedure would be to suspend him pending a full investigation. If the discrepancies are confirmed, termination would be the next step. Franklin nodded, a plan forming in his mind. Let's hold off on that for now, Mr. McCarty. I have a feeling Mr. Levine might have some interesting information to share. Keep this to yourself for the moment. I'll handle it personally. Arthur looked uncertain, but nodded. Of course, Mr. Browning, whatever you think is best. As Arthur left, Franklin turned to look out the window at the moonlit beach. Everything was falling into place. Anthony was working a dead-end job, clearly struggling, which meant Stella couldn't be far behind. Franklin's lips curved into a cold smile. It was time to spring the trap. The next evening, Franklin made his way to the resort's main restaurant. He'd chosen a table with a clear view of the entrance, ordered a bottle of expensive wine, and settled in to wait. He didn't have to wait long. Just as his main course arrived, he saw her. Stella walked in, and Franklin felt a jolt of satisfaction. She looked tired, her designer clothes from 2 years ago now looking slightly shabby. The glowing, carefree woman who'd left him was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate. Stella froze when she spotted Franklin, her eyes widening in shock. She recovered quickly, though, stalking over to his table with a look of fury on her face. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low but intense. Franklin leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Good evening to you too, Stella. You're looking, well." Stella's eyes narrowed. "Don't play games with me, Franklin. What are you doing in Bora Bora?" Franklin took a sip of his wine, savoring the moment. "Oh, didn't you hear? I own this place now. Well, Part of it anyway. Funny how things work out, isn't it? The color drained from Stella's face. You, what? Before Franklin could respond, Anthony appeared at Stella's side. He puffed out his chest, trying to look intimidating despite his bartender's uniform. Listen, man, you can't just... Franklin cut him off, his voice sharp as a knife. Actually, I can. Anthony, consider this your termination notice. Effective immediately. Anthony's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Stella's face contorted with rage. You can't do this, she sputtered. We'll fight you. Franklin stood, his voice low but firm. This is karma for you both. Get lost now, or I'll have security escort you out. As if on cue, 2 large security guards appeared nearby, watching the scene carefully. Stella grabbed Anthony's arm, her nails digging into his skin. This isn't over, Franklin, she hissed. You'll regret this. Franklin watched them go, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. Now, the real game could begin. As he signaled for the check, Franklin's phone buzzed. It was a text from Susan. How did it go? Franklin allowed himself a small smile as he typed his reply. Perfectly. They never saw it coming. He pocketed his phone and stepped out into the warm night air. The stars twinkled overhead, and the sound of the ocean filled his ears. Franklin took a deep breath, savoring the moment. For 2 years, he'd worked tirelessly towards this goal. He'd rebuilt his life, created a revolutionary product, and positioned himself perfectly for revenge. But this was just the beginning. Stella and Anthony thought they could break him and walk away unscathed. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Franklin Browning was no longer the naive, trusting man they'd betrayed. He was stronger now, harder, and he was just getting started. As he walked back to his suite, Franklin's mind raced with plans. He had them exactly where he wanted them, desperate, angry, and ready to make mistakes. All he had to do now was wait for them to play into his hands. The game was on, and Franklin intended to win, no matter the cost. The week following Franklin's dramatic confrontation with Stella and Anthony was tense. The resort buzzed with whispers and sidelong glances. Franklin could feel the weight of countless eyes on him as he moved through the property, but he refused to show any sign of weakness. Stella and Anthony, for their part, were not content to slink away in defeat. They began a campaign of whispered insinuations and outright lies, targeting both staff and guests. Their goal was clear: undermine Franklin's authority and paint him as unstable and unfit to run the resort. I heard he had a mental breakdown, Stella confided to a group of wealthy guests by the pool. That's why he suddenly bought into this place. He's not right in the head. Anthony, meanwhile, focused on the staff. He cornered a young housekeeper in a secluded hallway, his voice low and urgent. Browning's going to run this place into the ground. He doesn't know the first thing about hospitality. We'll all be out of jobs within a month. The rumors spread like wildfire. Franklin could see the uncertainty in the eyes of the staff, the wary glances from guests. He knew he had to act fast to regain control of the narrative. On Friday morning, Franklin called an all-staff meeting in the resort's largest conference room. As employees filed in, he stood at the front, projecting an aura of calm confidence. Once everyone was seated, he began. Good morning, everyone. I know there have been some interesting stories circulating this past week, Franklin said, a wry smile playing on his lips. I thought it was time we addressed them head-on. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. Yes, I'm new to the hospitality industry. Yes, I made my fortune in water filtration technology. And yes, I have a personal history with 2 individuals who were, until recently, employed here. A murmur ran through the crowd. Franklin held up a hand, silencing them. But I'm not here to air dirty laundry or settle old scores. I'm here because I believe in the potential of this resort, and in each and every one of you. Franklin's voice grew passionate as he outlined his vision for the future. He spoke of sustainability initiatives that would set them apart from competitors. He detailed plans for community involvement, for making the resort not just a retreat for the wealthy, but a vital part of the local economy. I know change can be scary, Franklin said, his tone softening, but I'm not here to sweep in and upend everything. I'm here to work with all of you to make this resort the best it can be. My door is always open. If you have concerns, ideas, or just want to chat, don't hesitate to come see me. As the meeting concluded, Franklin could see a shift in the room. The wariness was fading, replaced by cautious optimism. He'd won the first battle, but he knew the war was far from over. Over the next few days, Franklin threw himself into the work of running the resort. He was everywhere, helping in the kitchens, assisting guests, even pitching in with the groundskeeping. The staff watched in amazement as their new boss, the man they'd been told was unstable and incompetent, demonstrated a keen understanding of every aspect of the operation. Franklin also began implementing the eco-friendly practices he'd promised. New, more efficient air conditioning systems were installed. Water-saving devices were fitted in every room. Solar panels began to appear on rooftops. The results were immediate and impressive. Within a month, the resort's utility costs had dropped by 30%. Guests raved about the resort's commitment to sustainability, and bookings began to surge. Arthur McCarty, the resort manager, couldn't hide his amazement. "Mr. Browning," he said one evening, shaking his head in wonder, "I've never seen anything like this. The staff morale is through the roof. Guests are happier than ever, and we're saving a fortune on operating costs. How did you do it?" Franklin allowed himself a small smile. "It's simple, Arthur. I listened to the people who know this place best, you and your staff, and I applied a little ingenuity. That's all." As word of the resort's transformation spread, Franklin received a call from Gilbert Guerrero. "Franklin, my boy," the CEO boomed, "you've outdone yourself. The board is thrilled. We're thinking of implementing your methods across all our properties." Franklin's success was a bitter pill for Stella and Anthony. Their attempts to undermine him had backfired spectacularly, leaving them more desperate than ever. As they sat in their dingy rented apartment, Stella's face was a mask of fury. "This can't be happening," she seethed. "That pathetic loser was supposed to crash and burn, not become some kind of hospitality genius." Anthony paced the small living room, his expression dark. "We need to do something more drastic. Something he can't talk his way out of." Stella's eyes lit up with a malicious gleam. "What about the resort's computer system? If we could mess with the reservations, create some chaos." Anthony nodded slowly, a grin spreading across his face. "I like the way you think, babe. I've got a buddy who's good with computers. Maybe he could help us out." What they didn't know was that Franklin had anticipated just such a move. He'd worked closely with the IT department to set up a sophisticated honeypot trap designed to catch anyone attempting to breach the system. For 3 days, Stella and Anthony worked with their hacker friend, believing they were causing havoc with the resort's bookings. They imagined the chaos that would ensue: double-booked rooms, lost reservations, angry guests. Surely this would be the final nail in Franklin's coffin. On the 4th day, they gathered in their apartment to celebrate their perceived victory. Stella poured cheap champagne into plastic cups, her eyes gleaming with malicious glee. To the downfall of Franklin Browning, she toasted, raising her cup. Anthony clinked his cup against hers. "And to us, baby. We'll be running that place before you know it." Their celebration was cut short by a sharp knock at the door. Anthony frowned, setting down his drink. Who the hell could that be? He opened the door to find 2 burly security guards from the resort, accompanied by a stern-looking police officer. "Stella Browning and Anthony Levine?" the officer asked, his voice clipped and professional. Stella appeared behind Anthony, her face pale. "Yes? What's this about?" The officer's expression remained impassive. "You're under arrest for attempted cybercrimes against the Bora Bora Luxury Resort." As the reality of the situation sank in, Stella's composure cracked. She whirled on Anthony, her eyes wild with panic. "You said this would work. You promised we'd get rid of him." Anthony could only shrug helplessly as the officer read them their rights, and the security guards moved in to handcuff them. As they were led away, Stella caught a glimpse of a familiar figure standing in the shadows, Franklin, watching the scene unfold with a look of grim satisfaction. In that moment, she realized the full extent of her mistake. She hadn't just underestimated Franklin. She'd created a formidable enemy out of a man who had once loved her unconditionally. The following week, As the sun began to set over the crystal-clear waters of Bora Bora, Franklin stood on the beach, letting the warm sand sift through his toes. The past 2 years had been a whirlwind of pain, determination, and finally, triumph. Now, as he watched the sky turn a brilliant orange, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. A familiar voice broke into his reverie. "Penny for your thoughts?" Franklin turned to see Susan Chan walking towards him, a warm smile on her face. He'd invited her to Bora Bora to celebrate his success, and her presence felt like the final piece of a complex puzzle falling into place. "I was just thinking about how everything turned out," Franklin said, returning her smile. "It's hard to believe, isn't it?" Susan nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It really is. Are you okay, Franklin? I mean, with everything that's happened." Franklin took a deep breath, considering her question. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. "You know what? I really am. I lost something I thought was important, but I gained so much more. My work is making a difference, and I've learned what real loyalty looks like." He turned to Susan, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for sticking by me through all of this. I couldn't have done it without you." Susan's smile widened. "That's what friends are for, Franklin." "So, what's next for Franklin Browning, resort owner and environmental revolutionary?" Franklin chuckled, his mind already racing with possibilities. "I'm thinking expansion. There's a whole world out there that could use our help. And this time, I'm not letting anyone hold me back." As they walked along the beach, the resort gleaming behind them, Franklin felt a sense of closure. He'd not just survived betrayal, he'd thrived in spite of it. The future, for once, looked brighter than ever. They paused, watching as the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon. Franklin turned to Susan, suddenly aware of how right it felt to have her by his side. "You know, Susan," he said, his voice soft but confident, "I've been thinking. We've been such a great team, both professionally and personally. Would you like to grab dinner sometime? Not as colleagues, but maybe something more?" Susan's eyes lit up, a blend of surprise and joy dancing across her features. "I thought you'd never ask, Franklin." "I'd love to." As they continued their walk, hand in hand, Franklin marveled at the twists and turns his life had taken. He'd lost a wife, but gained a true partner. He'd been betrayed, but found the strength to rise above it. His work was changing the world, and he'd found someone who truly appreciated and supported his vision. Franklin realized that sometimes, losing what you thought you wanted could lead you to what you truly needed. With Susan by his side and his innovative ideas changing the world, he'd finally found his true path to happiness and success. As they strolled back towards the resort, the first stars twinkling overhead, Franklin felt a surge of excitement for the future. He'd weathered the storm, emerged stronger, and now the world was full of possibilities. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he was ready to face them, not alone, but with someone who truly understood and valued him. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy him had instead been the catalyst for his greatest triumphs. Franklin Browning had not just survived, he had conquered, and the best was yet to come.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.